Hi, what's going on guys? This is MJ from Dynamic Render Labs, and in this video I want to go over how we can import 4D people to D5 Render. And this either works for RenderPeople or Anima XYZ, both of them. Now, if you learn anything new from my video, please like, leave a comment and subscribe. Now, 4D people are a big new upgrade for 3D artists. They bring real-life movements and expressions, so no more stiff robotic characters. With these models, you get super realistic animations that fit perfectly into your scene. Companies like RenderPeople and Anima offer these models, and they really make artist projects look more lifelike. The prices can be high, but it's totally worth for the extra realism they add. You can buy them individually from RenderPeople or get a subscription from Anima. Now, these models aren't made specifically for D5 Render, but with the help of my scripts, you can easily use them in your D5 Render projects. Make sure to download them, link in the description. So, in this video, first we convert Anima file to Alembic or .abc. You can skip this if you already have .abc file, for example, if you got RenderPeople. After the ABC file, we create the snapshots in Max and run our reanimate 4D script. Then we export and import it to D5 Render, which we have auto texture macro to take care of material. Lastly, we test and save it for later use. Also, I will go over some tips and tricks. So let's get started. First, as I've said, you need ABC file and texture to begin with. It's common for RenderPeople because you download it this way. For Anima, however, it's a bit tricky because they don't work this way and you have to make it. So let's go to Anima app now. When you open it, this is the interface. We want to open our model. If yours is online, just download it from here. You just right click and download. You can also use this Get More to go to the big library. If you have a file, we go to edit mode here, and in the left panel you can see the project section. We select the plus sign, and here it asks us to create the project, and we do. Choose a name, how about Workout Girl, and we can also set the location of the project. Now, after creating the project, we go directly to the import window, where we can press the three dots here and choose our .y model and press on import. Now we can see the model here, and to be fair, it looks very cool. Here in right panel we can see the information including how long is the animation. Note this, especially the frames for later. Now we are going to import this to Max, which we use as a bridge to D5 Render. We should go back to draw mode here. There are some models here right now, but I'm gonna select and delete them. Now we can drag the model and place it somewhere. On the right panel, there is an actor properties, which we better change and place the position at 0, 0, 0. It's easier to work on it this way. Now we can just save the project and go to Max. Okay, here is the Max. I press Alt and W while in perspective view to maximize the viewport. Now there are several things you should do first. One is setting the units, which for Anima objects is centimeter, at least for the ones I have. So we go to customize, unit setup, and choose centimeter for both display unit and system unit setup. Then the timeline. In 3ds Max, when you open it, it's limited to 100 frames per second by default. So we're gonna assign what we need. Using Anima All, you should have noted how many frames your model has, as I told you. But if you don't have Anima All, you can only import 120 frames, like me. So open time configuration and type the number of your frames in the frame count. My case, 120. So my range would be from 0 to 119. Remember, you should type the amount of frames you saw in your file info. Let's import our model now. Go here in AXYZ design and press import Anima project. Choose yours. Now it's very important, we should not press play. If you do that, Anima will create duplicate textures for frames, and that will cause a little problem. So no play. No. If it did, clear the cache folder, we're gonna talk about it a little bit. Then restart Max and import Anima project again.
Coach, I'll die if I don't play.
Now we should let the Max know there are textures, so select the outer shape in the ground, go to modify here, scroll a bit down in the viewport setting, choose the colored for the actors drop down and choose textured for the actors. After that, File, go to export and choose .abc and save it in the folder you want. This is the usual setting I go with. After the export process is done, now when you open the project folder, there's this texture cache folder. And go inside and you can see the textures. Here, look for the image with 4 zeros at the end and press it, then hold shift and scroll down and select the last one, which should be based on your last frame. Mine, 190. Now listen, here it says how many images I've selected. Look, 120, exactly as my model. If it's more, it means duplicates, but mine doesn't have one. I didn't press play. Don't press play.
Martin, don't press it this time.
So let's put these textures next to our ABC file. Great. Now, if you look at their names, it's very weird. I think it's encrypted or something, but we're gonna rename them. So while they're selected, right click on the first one and go to rename and rename it to texture with a 0 in parentheses. Just look how I write it. You should write it exactly this way because this is how our macro imports textures. So texture with 0 in parentheses.
Do I have to repeat myself every time I talk to you? Who is he?
Now let's talk a bit why we have these many pictures. Each frame has its own textures, and this is how this animation works, and this is why it's lifelike, because every frame is accurate. So let's go to Max again, make a new file by going into File, New. Import the .abc file you just created, go with the settings, and there we are. It's okay to press play now.
Press it now, press it now.
Let's open our Scene Explorer here, we'll need it. As you can see, we have 4 items. Item 1 is the alembic, which is our control kinda. And then it's the model. There are also 2 guides here that we don't really care about. Okay, the alembic is the control for the model. Like if you want to move it, scale it, or anything else, you're gonna use the alembic file. And I suggest create a box around the model and check the height, especially if you didn't make the ABC file yourself. It's really possible the scale is not what you want. People use different units. You want to make sure it's the right size for you. Check the height, and if it's wrong, use a scale to make it right. And here the model is 185. I mean, it's above average. I'm less than 180 myself. Jesus. It's okay, it's okay. I meant if it was like 10 meters, then the scale. I mean, this is small. We can work with it.
Bane says that I'm tall enough for a tall man.
Now, we have said before, each frame should show the right textures. Now, many softwares have the right tool to show different images in different frames. They call it image sequence materials, but D5 doesn't have one yet. It actually does have the multimedia, but that one is not for this purpose. It's not that accurate. So in order to import these to D5, we want this single material model have different materials for each frame. For that, first we need to create a snapshot. So this way we separate frames from each other. For that, go here in Tools, choose a snapshot, and pick a range. You can pick any range you want. I'm going full, so 0 to 119. And the copies should be total amount of frames. If you start at 0, number of copies is the last frame plus 1. So mine will be 120.
121 mark.
Press OK and wait until it's finished. Now, in the list, remove the alembic file and also the original file, which is probably the first one in this big list. To make sure, move it aside and then move the playhead. It should have animation. Alright, now we should give our snapshots animation and different materials, so let's select them. It's important to select the first number in the list, then hold shift and then select the last one. Now you can run the auto animate 4D script. It has auto, it has animate, and it has matte, which is material. And at the end is 4D. Hey, I'm creative.
Do you know how much I spent?
This script animates the snapshots and gives them material for D5 render. You know it's done when it tells you. After that, while everything is still selected, go to Export, Export Selected, and create your file for importing to D5. Then, open D5 and import it. After it's imported, bring it to the scene, select it, pause the animation, set playhead to the beginning, and set offset to 0. Here lies a D5 bug which causes severe lag. I've talked to them and they told me they'll fix it soon, so hopefully it will be fixed soon. But how we can fix this for now? Always set the offset to 1. I mean, it's a good fix. It does require some stuff later in future, but we don't have to deal with this. Before we give them textures, we need the simple basic material, and I have 2 for it. This is the first one without the specular texture, and here's the one with the specular. Feel free to change the numbers based on your personal taste. Naturally, having the specular texture makes the file a bit heavier. Not that much, of course, but you already know your system and its limits.
Rocco, this is all I got.
So before you run the macro, you better save your file and then make sure autosave is off. It will cause some problems. Then you will just run the macro. What the macro does is generally to click on some places and type some stuff based on the script we've given it. And that's how we are going to give our model material. So we're going to tell, for example, select model, go to next frame and assign the material to it.
You're gonna do what I tell you to do.
So for it to work right, we need to not change anything we see here. And then we're gonna let the macro know where everything is. So let's run it. Here, it asks for the first one, which is empty space. After pressing OK, you have around 2 seconds to place the mouse at the location which always stays empty. I move the mouse here. Now, next one is the model. You have to choose a location where your model always exists. For example, she's doing setups. I cannot set that location around her head, since when she goes down, we cannot select her anymore. So make sure you're putting the mouse over a good location. Even when this message is showing, you can still play the animation to find the best place. After that, I would suggest to type 0 in offset to reset it, then type 1 again, so it will look like this. I understand this will be hard for models which move in circle or dance, but you get the hang of it. And you can also run the macro several times, so it's really okay, don't worry about it. Now, when you're ready, press OK, then again, move your mouse within 2 seconds. Next macro will ask for the location of offset number. My file is already selected and you can see offset number here. So I press OK and move my mouse there. There we go. Next is the material. Have your asset library open here and make sure it's not over the place you set your model or empty space. I'm going to choose this material which has specular as well. So I'm gonna press OK and then move my mouse there. Next is the basic texture. To have that available now, we can apply the material. After we do that, it will be here. So press on the basic texture map and navigate to the folder with the textures we created before. Now again, make sure your textures are named exactly as I said in your naming textures chapter. It should be texture, no space, frame number in parentheses. like this. For now, you can just assign a texture to make sure everything is going well. So I'm gonna choose the texture 1 because I am in the frame 1, and there we go. She looks great. So let's press OK and move the mouse to the position of the basic texture. There we go. Lastly, if you're running the macro with the specular, you want to move the mouse where a specular texture is located. After that, the macro will ask for the first and last frame. Since we have the FPS issues, I suggest to start at 1 for now and then go until 119. If your model is complex and moves a lot, as I said before, you can run the macro several times for different frame sets. Now here's the warning before you start. When you press yes, you cannot stop it. It will go until all the frames have textures, and it also saves the file for you. Make sure you press it when you're ready to go away and don't touch your computer for a while. When the macro starts, as I said, you can do anything with your PC since it's just working as if someone is sitting there and working. It's not in background. And the script takes about like 10 seconds per frame, so it's not that much, but at least you don't have to do it yourself. See? Huh? And I should warn you again, when you assign location for empty space model and the rest, you cannot change the view or anything else. You need to keep everything just as when you were giving the locations, so it will work right. Other than that, it's gonna mess it up, and you can actually stop the messing up. I think I should have made something to avoid that. Sorry. When it finishes, the mission accomplished message shows up. I did came up with all the scripts of this process, but it was my friend Sasha's idea to use macros for the texture, so I really need to thank him again. I mean, I used to do this by hand and it was really hard. Yeah, thank you, man, thank you. And also I should thank my friend Fajan as well. He was by my side creating this entire process, and I can't thank him enough. Now, everything is done. I suggest rendering a video just to make sure everything is right. There may be some problems, wrong textures, you never know. It may happen, so go to animation, create a shot, set it to the total time, mine was 4 seconds, and render. As you can see, the video is nice and there's no problem, but what if there was some problem? For example, take a look at this video. As you can see, there are obviously some issues here. So I opened it in After Effects to identify the problems. It's easier here. Double click in the import area so you can import your video. After that, drag it here to create a composition. Now, let's navigate. Look at this, the texture is not right here, and now look at the frame here, it's 46. Let's go to D5, go to this frame. Well, 46 is okay here, but always check one after or one before. Hey, there we go, it's the 47. Okay, let's change the texture. For this, choose a texture before or after it. Now, this is frame 47, so either 46 or 48 may work. Let's check them out first. As you can see, 48 looks kind of like 47, but 46 is totally different, and that's what we are looking for. We want a different one, so we choose it, and there we go. You should also fix it for specular by copying it here and pasting it here. Great. Now, if there was no issues here, or after you fixed any issues, you can export and save it by pressing this here. You can actually add it to your local library as well, but I suggest going this way. Since in our projects, loading from asset library may cause crash. I don't know why, but loading it from import is safer. I never had a crash while doing this.
I'm tired of being clobbered.
Now, to use your model, I suggest use it in the beginning of the clip since they won't replay correctly. And to avoid any issues, I suggest just before rendering, set the offset to 0 to reset any offset here, then change it to 1 and start this way. Make sure you do this just before export. If you press play, as you can see, if you go at the beginning, there are 2 models here. That's why you're gonna reset it. And now when using the models in your projects, there are some flickers and they will be severe if your model is in the shadows. It's much better when they're in direct light. For fixing this flicker, here's a great way my friend Fajon came up with, to use Topaz Video AI. And this is how it works. Open your video. Here you can even upscale and do a bunch of stuff, but we mostly need some enhancement. We use the NYX model, and for stabilization we just use the basic settings, check these 2, and that will be it. After you export, the flicker will be fixed. Also, there are some other issues. I will be posting a video regarding them soon, but if you have a really heavy scene, there's a possibility the textures won't load correctly. To avoid this, try to first render after fresh restart, so the temp folder of your Windows is lighter. Make sure also super resolution is on in D5 menu, and also wait long enough for it to load the textures in the preview before rendering. If it's not loaded in the preview, it's not going to be loaded at the final render as well. I also suggest rendering sequence instead of video. To activate it, go to Preference, Widget, Advanced Video Rendering. This way, if the textures are not loading in first few frames, you can just stop the render and render again. Do this couple of times, usually this works. If it didn't work, you need to render twice. One regular and one only your character on green screen. I mean, wow. You can combine them in After Effects, and I know it seems complicated, but it's actually quite easy. I'll explain more in the next video. And lastly, if you have several objects and it's causing crash, I suggest after creating the animation, split your file into 2 or 3 files, each with 1 or 2 4D models, or how many your system can handle. Combining them is very easy in After Effects, and again, I'll explain it in the next video. So have fun and keep creating.